Okay, tell me your name and the date that you were born and where you were born at.
My name is Alfonso Quiroz, Quiroz. I was born 1936 in the town of Pullman on Langley Avenue, 11311 Langley on the third floor.
What was the full date of your birth? The month and the day.
August 2nd, 1936.
And who were your parents?
My parents is Felix Quiroz, and my mother's name is Elena Rodriguez Quiroz.
And where did they come from?
They were born in Mexico, in Zamora, Michoacán, Mexico. My dad was born in León, Guanajuato, Mexico.
And what was their? Do you know how they met, or what was the? And you can just like you're having a conversation.
Well, my father met my mother years ago when they were young, and then my father migrated to the United States when he was 23 years old. And he passed through Eagles Pass, Texas, and he got a job on a railroad, laying railroad tracks. And he moved from that point on, he moved to Kansas City, Missouri, and got a job there on the railroad tracks. And then he found out that they were hiring people in Chicago, Illinois, Sherwin-Williams plant. So he migrated to Chicago, Illinois, and he got off the train at Illinois Central, 115th and Front Street. At Parisi's, what was it? No, the Vento. What's the name of that restaurant?
Pesaventos?
Pesavento's restaurant. That's when they had the second and third floor level of the restaurant, and he stayed at one room.
He lived in Pesaventos?
Upstairs.
They had a house upstairs in Pesaventos.
He lived in Pesavento's upstairs one room boarding house. And then he got a job at Sherwin-Williams, and he worked at Sherwin-Williams for many years, and he migrated to Pullman. Soon after, he got a job at Sherwin-Williams, and he got an apartment there. And then he sent for my mother, and my mother came by herself, migrated from Mexico by train to Laredo, Texas, and they both got together, and then they started raising the family on Langley. That's where all of us were born.
So he married her, and then he left her there.
Yes.
And then came here. Why did he want to come here? Why didn't they stay in Mexico?
My father wanted to come to the United States because there was a better future and better living conditions and things like that. There was opportunity for him to make money.
And did he buy? What was the story that he bought a house there, and then
he bought a house when he left. He was 19, 20 years old. He bought a house in Zamora, Michoacán, Mexico, and he let the people rent there for free as long as they took care of the house. And then over the years, the people sold the house. I don't know how, but they sold the house. And my father had to go back to Mexico and fight, take the people to court and everything, and fought for the house, and he got it back.
They pretended that they owned the house.
Right. They pretended they owned the house, and they sold it to an individual family.
And then your dad had to go back and fight it.
Years later, my dad had to go back and fight it and take him to court and everything like that.
Because somebody else bought it.
Right.
And so he showed up and somebody else was living there.
Well, yes, he came up and he says that this house isn't yours. It belongs to other people because we bought it from the renter that was there. So my dad took them to court and everything like that, and he won it, and he got the house back. And then he refurbished the house for us to go down there and visit him and live there for a while.
Now, what was his job in Mexico? Did he work on railroads there, or how did he know to work on railroads here? I mean, was that like his trade?
My dad, his occupation was working on the farms, and then he found out that there were to come to the United States, migrate to the United States, and then when he crossed the border in Texas there, he got a job on a railroad laying tracks, and then he found out that they were hiring more people in interior of the United States to Kansas City, and he got a job laying tracks in Kansas City, Missouri. And then he found out that they're hiring people in Chicago, so he migrated back to Chicago from Kansas City and got a job at Sherwin-Williams Paint Company.
And did he ever tell you about his family back in León, or did he have like brothers or sisters, or did he ever tell you about his parents or anything?
My dad's brothers and sisters lived in Zamora, Michoacán, and
I thought they lived in León.
Yeah, but that's what they were. My dad was raised in León.
With his brothers and sisters. So
right, and then they migrated to Zamora.
So he was born in León.
Right.
And then, but did he ever tell you about his brothers, sisters, or parents there? In León?
No, he never said nothing about that.
But he had like a brother, right?
He had three brothers.
And you remember their names?
My uncle, my father's brothers, my uncles, were Miguel, I forgot the other two names, and the sister.
Oh, so he had three brothers and one sister.
Right, two sisters and three brothers or something like that.
And did he ever tell you about his parents?
No, he never discussed nothing about the parents. I don't know. It's a forgotten thing. It's about his family.
And then, so why did he come from León to Zamora then? Because
he was dating my mother in Zamora, and he would travel from León to Zamora, and then he eventually lived in Zamora until he got married, and then my dad migrated from Zamora to Eagles Pass, Texas, and migrated to Kansas City.
Did he ever tell you about any stories about what his life was like when he was in Texas, when he first came over?
No, my dad had a quiet life. He didn't discuss much about it. I guess it was rough, living job to job, working on farms and things like that.
Did he ever tell you like people discriminated against him, or?
No, he never said nothing about discrimination or nothing like that.
And so then, after he was in Texas, he moved to Kansas City, and besides working on the railroad tracks, did he tell you anything about what life was like in Kansas City?
No, he never discussed nothing about Kansas City, how his living conditions or anything like that. Who he was staying with, who he was living with, or whatever.
But what was his job laying down tracks? What does that mean?
Laying tracks down, the railroad ties, laying the tracks down for the railroad.
So he was like a laborer?
Yeah, he was like a laborer. He was like a laying tracks laborer.
And then he heard about a job in Chicago and then moved here?
He heard about the job in Chicago, Illinois, Sherwin-Williams Paint Factory, and he migrated from Kansas City to Chicago, and he got off the train on 115th and Cottage Grove. And he walked across the street to Pesavento's, and he stayed there. That was the first place he stayed, at the rooming house above the restaurant.
Is that rooming house still there?
The building, the restaurant's there, but the upper floors are gone.
Oh, because it only looks like it's one floor.
Yeah, well, they had three floors.
And did he ever tell you what it was like when he first came here? Or how did you know, what year do you think he came here?
1924, he arrived here.
And then he stopped at Pesavento's and was staying there, and then he got a job immediately at Sherwin-Williams?
He got a job immediately. They hired him and as a laborer, and he worked in Sherwin-Williams for 35 years, over 35 years.
And what was his job when he first came here at Sherwin-Williams?
A laborer.
What does that mean?
He would just labor work, just emptying out paint buckets or just labor work, just common labor work.
And the factory was right near where he was staying.
Right. The factory was about a block away from where he was staying at.
And then he called for Grandma to come here.
After he got settled in, and then he called for Grandma and wrote her a letter and to come to the United States to start a new life.
And how long was he here before he called her? So he moved here, went to Texas, Kansas City, then moved to Chicago, got a job. How many years was that?
The time he arrived in Chicago, and the time he sent for my mother, I don't know. I can't tell you. Maybe about 5 years, maybe 3 years, 5 years, or something like that.
And so your mother was born where, and what was her history before she met Grandpa?
My mother was born in a small town called La Salceda in Zamora, Michoacán. It's a suburb of a little village suburb of Zamora.
And who were her parents?
Her parents was he was a horse breeder. He had horses, and they sold eggs and chickens and stuff like that.
And what was his name?
My great-grandfather's name was Francisco Frank Rodriguez.
Well, Francisco Rodriguez.
Francisco Rodriguez.
All right, so just say it again. What was your grandma's parents' names?
My great-grandfather and grandmother's was named Francisco Rodriguez.
And what was grandma's mother's name?
My mother's name was Mary Rodriguez.
Your mother's mother.
Yeah, my mother's mother was named Mary Rodriguez.
Mary Rodriguez. And then, so she was born in Salceda, and then she had a baby named Manuel, and then she moved to Zamora, or how did that?
When my mother, when she was young, she was working for this guy that owned a business. And one thing led to another. She had an affair with the owner of this business, and she bared a child called Manuel. And my grandfather didn't like that, so he discarded her. He disowned her. And my mother was on her own. She was just living alone, and she lived with friends and things like that. My grandfather kicked her out of the house.
She told you that he kicked her out of the house?
Yeah, because she was pregnant.
Well, that's a terrible time to kick somebody out of the house when they're pregnant.
But that's the way it was. That's the way, shame to the family that she got pregnant without being married.
And so the father of Uncle Manuel is a man named Roa.
My half-brother, Manuel, I can't remember.
Well, it must have been Roa, his last name.
That was the lady that was taking care of him. She was like a mid-mother.
Oh, so
my mother came from to Mexico to the United States, and she gave the baby to this woman, a good friend of hers, to raise the kid while she'd come to the United States. And the kid, Manuel, was raised with this woman called Roja.
Oh, that's where he got his last name.
Right.
But his real father was a older rancher?
No, he was an older businessman. He owned a business, some kind of business, store or something. I don't know.
And did she ever discuss that with you? Like how?
No, she never discussed nothing. Nothing about where they're raised and all the difficult life they had and everything like that. They never discussed nothing.
So how did you figure out that you had a brother then?
my mother would tell us that she would send money to Mexico to support this kid, Manuel, for education, college, and everything like that. And she would work in the restaurants over here, did wash dishes and everything like that, and send money to this woman in Mexico that was raising this kid because he was a Mexican citizen. He was an American citizen.
And so she just said it was like she was just helping this kid out.
Right. She was just helping this kid out.
And then she finally told you who it was, or?
Eventually, she told us that she had a child in the early years of her life, and he couldn't come back. He couldn't come to the United States because she was traveling alone.
So, so then Grandma had Manuel and then was living with friends in Zamora. And then when she was a teenager and pregnant and had this baby, did she have to work, or what was her?
Yes, she had to work. She would do odd jobs or whatever, any kind of job she would get, clean house and all that. And then she migrated.
What was her? She had a big family though, brothers and sisters that were close. So what was the?
She had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Actually, 3 brothers. One died at an early age, and they lived in Zamora, and they sell milk, and they had cows, and they had chickens and goats and donkeys and everything like that.
And what was their names? Which one was the oldest, and how did they?
The oldest sister, my aunt, was Anna, and the second oldest was Chole. Her name was Chole, and the third one her name was Lupita, Lupi.
But Grandma was the third, right?
Right.
So it was Anna, Chole, your mother, Elena.
It was Anna, my mother, and then Chole, and then Lupita.
And then the boys.
And then the boys were Alfonso and Luis.
And Luis was the youngest.
Luis was the youngest.
And Alfonso's still living.
Alfonso's still living.
And so then she was in Mexico, and then at some point she met your dad. He went to the United States, and then he called for her, and then she took a train out by herself.
Right. She traveled by herself. She was traveling with a group of people that were migrating from Mexico into the United States. And they didn't come across the border illegally. They came across just like crossing the street to one side of the street to another side. That's the boundaries. There's no limitations. There's no restrictions or anything like that who was coming to the United States. They just paid their toll booth to walk across the bridge, the Rio Grande Bridge, and that was it. I think it was 15 cents or 10 cents to walk per person to walk across the bridge.
And so then, did she ever tell you about any stories about what it was like to come over here or travel by herself? Because that must have been pretty scary.
Well, my mother, she would talk a little bit, and she would say that when she came, they got an apartment in Pullman, and they lived there for many years. And then she couldn't speak English, and there was a lot of Italians living in Pullman, and there's one Italian woman that owned a grocery store, and my mother used to get acquaintance with her, and she would go into the grocery store, speak Spanish, and Italian and the Spanish language is almost identical. And that's how they communicate. And my mother used to point at different cans of food or how she wanted her meat cut and everything like that. And that's how they communicate, and they were real good friends.
Who was the Italian woman?
The Italian woman was named, I forgot.
And so when they came here, then what was the lineup of the kids here? And where did they live first?
They lived on 113th and Langley on the 3rd floor, and my sister
This is the building that's no longer there.
My mother lived on 11259. That's where the park is.
Okay.
There was a building there too. They tore it down. My sister Helen and my sister Sal was born in that building.
Okay.
And then I was born down the block.
Well, no, then it was Aunt Esther.
And Aunt Esther was born in that building too.
Okay, so then they moved, or you were born at the...
They moved down the block and to a third floor apartment building because they were tearing that building down. So they moved down the block, 11311, and that's where I was born. My brother was born, and my sister Mary, the youngest one, was born on 111th 09 or 11112 or something like that in Langley. The building's still there.
So they lived in the first building where the park is, and that's where they had Helen, Celia, and Esther, and you. Then they moved to another block house.
They moved to another block on 100.
Because
111.
They said you lived where the stairway goes in.
Yeah, we lived there. We lived on 11159 Langley, and I guess the rent was too high or something like that. So we moved across the street, down the street to 111th 09, 111th 12 or something like that. The block house on the third floor. We lived there for a while. We lived there for about maybe 8 years or something like that.
That's the building that's still standing.
Right.
And then when they first moved to Pullman, were there other Mexican families here?
Well, we were the second Mexican family living in Pullman at the time.
And did people treat her okay? I mean, were they?
Well, there was a lot of immigrants in this town. There were Polish, there was Italians, there were Greeks, there were Irish, there were a variety of races that lived down here.
And what was the setup for the building that's still there, the last blockhouse that you lived in? I thought you had told me that you had like 3 apartments or something, or what was the layout, or how did you? Because that's a lot.
Well,
family.
we lived on 111th, and then eventually we moved to 11219 Langley. The building's gone, and we lived there on the 3rd floor, and the block house, they had a bunch of apartments, and they combined 2 apartments into one. That's where we lived there, and
is this the last building that's still standing that you're talking about, or
no, the one it's gone. It's gone.
So the building that's gone now. They had 2 apartments that they combined into one.
Right.
And that's where you guys lived. But the last building that is still there, what was the layout there? Because we have photos of like a stovepipe coming in. And
yeah, well, we had there was a kitchen, and there was a bedroom, 2 bedrooms and a kitchen, and we had outdoor plumbing. We had outdoor toilets in the hallway, community hallway, a bathroom, and a sink. It was like a slush sink. It was a big tub sink. No hot water, just cold water.
And so the apartment had 2 bedrooms, a kitchen, and a living room?
No, a kitchen and 2 bedrooms, that's all.
And then how did, because it was Grandpa, Grandma, Helen, Celia, Esther, you, Ray, Mary. So that's...
All the girls
6, 7,
slept
8.
in one bedroom, and my brother and I slept in the other bedroom.
And then where did Grandma and Grandpa sleep?
They slept in the same bedroom where my daughters were sleeping. My sisters were sleeping.
So it was Grandma, Grandpa, and all the girls in one room.
Right.
And then you and Uncle Ray in the other room.
Right.
And then that was when Grandpa was working at
Sherwin-Williams. Right.
And then and at this point, didn't he? You said that he had a garden out.
He had a garden. My dad had a garden. He started planting a garden in between the two big buildings that are still existing now. And he extended it more and more every year. He made it longer for in between the two buildings, and he would grow green onions, he would grow tomatoes, he would grow corn, and then eventually he started growing green onions. And I would, after school, I would go and sell them at the factory, at the Sherwin-Williams factory, with the newspapers, selling the bunch of onions for 15 cents, 10 cents a bunch. And then my dad found out that cilantro, the plant cilantro, parsley, was a big seller point, and my dad started growing cilantro, and he made enough money to go back to Mexico and fight for his house. He paid for the lawyers and everything there.
How did he get access to start building a garden there?
He started just like a vacant lot. He started building a little garden, and then it was starting to get bigger. And then the people that owned that property, the real estater, said, "I'll allow you to grow your garden, but you have to cut the grass. You have to cut the weeds, keep it trimmed." So my dad did that. He cut the weeds and everything like that, and then he grew his garden.
Now, the building that you were at, the one that's still standing, was right on top of the shops. Do you remember like what it sounded like, or was it noisy living there? I mean, because I can imagine like it must have been like smelly, or I don't know, what was it like?
Every night there used to be a fire department going into the factory, some accident or some fire or something like that. Every night.
Explain what was on the other side of the tracks by you guys. So it was your building, and then explain what was the
east of the apartment building was Calumet Shops, the repair shop. And across the street going north from 111th Street was the factory. And the factory were built the new cars.
And the Calumet Shops repaired?
And the Calumet Shops had repair shop. It was like cars that come in that break down or accidents or something like that. They would repair them right there. They had a big railroad yard there.
And so you lived right on top of that?
I lived right on top of that. And then they had... I can remember going to school, and every morning at 8 o'clock in the morning, the garbage trains would come. Big trains loaded with garbage from the city, and they would burn the garbage in the incinerator on 103rd and Doty Ave. But they would park there for a couple of hours, and all that smell would go right next to into the building. There was no control of that. And every morning you could smell the garbage. And you could hear the trains going back and forth and like that.
Now, in between having all these kids, and Grandpa worked at Sherwin-Williams, did Grandma work? Or was she just a stay-at-home mom?
Grandma, she got a job at the Hotel Florence. No, first she got a job on 111th and Cottage Grove in a restaurant, washing dishes. And then from that point on, she became a waitress. And then when that shut down, the restaurant sold out. And then she got a job at the Hotel Florence as a housemaid. And then from a housemaid to supervisor and a housemaid. And then from that point on, now the owners were Mrs. Fisher, the owners. And they asked her, they were going to sell the hotel, and they asked her would she like to move into their mansion on the north side to be their housekeeper. And my mother turned it down and said, "No, I got my family here, I got to live here, I got to stay with them." So she turned that job down.
How did she work and raise the family then? Who was home when you guys got home from school? Or
my older sisters was the ones that took care of us.
And what do you remember about that? They were home when you got home? Because they went to school too.
Yeah, they went to school too.
So who watched Auntie Mary when they were... Or do you remember how you did that?
No, I don't. Well, there was a lot of families, large families, and one family would take care of another family. It was a community thing, like.
And Auntie Sel and Auntie Helen would watch you younger kids.
Auntie Helen would watch the younger kids.
And then, did Grandma ever tell you about what it was like when she worked at the hotel?
My mother would say, well, she would say she would work at the hotel, and there was a lot of people living in there at the time, and she would be the housekeeper and everything like that. And matter of fact, I got a job at the cafeteria in the Hotel Florence, in the annex, washing dishes on the weekends. Washing dishes and busboy and all that after school.
After school. And now
during the week after school, and then during the weekend at the all day Saturday and all day Sunday.
And now you went to a few schools. What were the schools that you went to?
I went to Pullman School. I went to Holy Rosary School. I went to West Pullman School. And then eventually I ended up in Chicago Vocational School.
But school really wasn't for you. You didn't.
No, school wasn't. I was really interested in making money and different things like that. You know, I was on my own more or less. You know, the money that I would make, shoe shining and everything like that, I would buy my clothes and you know, just have pocket money. You know.
Were you not? I mean, you just weren't interested in like. You didn't want to be there at the school, right? I mean, you.
No, I just the school wasn't my main interest. It was out to make money, and that was it.
And then, how many years after you were born was Uncle Ray born?
My brother was born 2 years after I was born.
So you guys were close from the beginning.
2 years apart.
And then, did he go to the same schools as you did, or?
Yes, he went to the same school, and then eventually, I don't know whatever happened. It just that our educational history is just a fake. Not a fake. Just it's not a big deal.
And do you have any memories of Holy Rosary? Because we have the pictures of you guys.
Yeah, we got Holy Rosary School. I used to. Well, we couldn't afford the tuition, so we got on like a public aid thing at the school, and they paid for our tuition.
And then, so you first went to Holy Rosary, and then you went to public school at Pullman School?
First, I went to Pullman School, and then I got in trouble or something like that, and I wasn't a good student. And then I went to Holy Rosary and stayed there for a couple of years there. And then I went to West Pullman School, where they allowed me to go to West Pullman School.
And then for high school, for a couple of years, you went to
Chicago Vocational.
And what are your memories of that? You remember any of that?
No, I don't have much memories of that. I don't have much memory because I was a delinquent student. You know, I was always on my own, and I was always.
Did you feel that you just didn't connect, or you didn't?
My education wasn't that perfect, and I wasn't enthused on being someone. I just wanted to make money to live good. You know, that was it. Other students, you know, the parents would pay their tuition, their college fees, and everything like that. My parents were poor, and they couldn't afford the tuition or anything like that.
Now, Ma always said that you were a little bit of a bad boy, but did you consider yourself a bad boy, or did you just...
Well, I hung around with guys that, in Pullman, on Langley Avenue, they would call that Incubator Ave. There were a lot of families there, a lot of Italians and a lot of Greeks and a lot of Polish people with big families, and they all lived there. It was all, we used to play out in the street and everything like that. And one thing led to another, and then we became involved in a lot of dishonest things, you know. But that's where I grew up.
But it wasn't to be dishonest, but you just felt like you needed, like it was the easy way to get some money, or
Right, to get some money and to be on my own, you know. It's just that.
Did you feel like you had to rebel against your parents, or
No, I didn't have no rebellion against my parents or anything like that. It's just that there were so many kids in our family that there wasn't enough money to share different things that I always wanted. You know, nice clothes and good food and things like that. And then I found out that I could make money by shoe shining. I used to have $10, $15 in quarters, nickels, and dimes and everything like that. And I used to go out and I used to shoe shine to 11 o'clock at night. I would start about 6 o'clock and go shoe shining all night.
shoe shining where?
In the tavern. There must have been about 35 taverns in Pullman. And all these taverns, there's guys in there, you know, shoe shining in there, you want to shine and all that. And Kensington, I shoe shine too. And on Michigan Ave, there was a couple of taverns there too. I used to shoe shine. I used to walk down Michigan Ave all the way to 107th Street in the middle of the night.
And how old were you at this point?
About 10, 12 years old.
And your parents let you out at 10 or 12 to walk around Michigan Avenue at midnight?
Well, they didn't know where I was. They knew I was shoe shining, but they didn't know where I was.
Did they try to discipline you at all?
No, they didn't try to discipline me because I would come home with money. And, you know, they didn't have to give me any money because I already had my spending money.
And who was was there a discipliner? Was Grandpa more the discipliner, or your mother was more the discipliner?
My mother was more disciplined than my dad. My dad, he's a quiet guy, and he worked every day and everything like that. He was a hard worker and all that. And
how did Grandma discipline you?
well, she would scold me out, and then she would warn me about different things and everything like that.
And so then you would shoe shine for money when you were younger all around Pullman and Roseland.
Shoe shining, and then I got involved with the wrong crowd of guys, and we end up stealing cars, and we end up robbing people and things like that. You know, it was one of them things. You know.
And when you were growing up like that, did you explain to me how your friends from Market Hall and what you did around there? What was that? Was this the same sort of guys, and who were they, and how did that happen?
The guys from the Market Hall, they were older guys, and I started hanging around with them, and then we would drink a lot of beer, and then we would. Guys from Kensington would try to date some of the girls that lived in Pullman here, and we would chase them out there, and we would fight with them and everything like that. They wanted to take care of area control. In other words, like
Turf.
turf.
So the guys in Roseland would fight the guys in Pullman.
Yeah,
And
and other places too, South Chicago and 95th Street and Michigan Ave and everything like that. There are different areas, you know, West Pullman, you know, different things like that.
Now, if you could go back and talk to yourself when you were hanging out there and getting involved, what would you say to yourself? I mean, are you not happy, but do you feel like that being involved in a bad crowd taught you something, or would you go back and say, listen, this is not for you. It's going to cause more trouble than that.
Well, when I was growing up, and I got involved in a lot of activities and everything like that, and then everybody was getting married. They were getting married at 17 years old. All my buddies and everything like that, they were getting married, and there was only a couple of guys that weren't married, and eventually I said to myself, well, I think it's time. And that's when I fell in love with Marilyn and then married her.
Before you met and were dating Ma, who were you dating? Did you have girlfriends then?
Yeah, I had a bunch of girlfriends. I had school girlfriends and things like that, but nothing serious. No, nothing involving or anything like that. So.
And did you feel like your parents wanted you to get married and to a Mexican girl or anything like that?
My parents wanted me to marry a girl from Mexico to keep the Mexican race involved in our family, and when I started dating Marilyn and everything, she started coming around because of my sister. My sister Mary and Marilyn were good friends, and one thing led to another. We got acquainted and everything like that.
So how did Ma start hanging around? I mean, I know they were friends, but I heard that she was like over all the time, like would sleep over.
Well,
but I can't understand. The apartment's so small. You got people all over each other, and then this girl is hanging around, sleeping over.
She lived across the street at the time, and Marilyn would come, and she would every day. She would come early in the morning, and she'd stay all day and things like that, and she'd hang around with my sister. She'd go to school with her and everything like that. And then when I first got my car, I used to drive them to Franger High School and pick them up after school and everything like that, bring them home.
Do you remember when you first met Mom and what your impressions were of her? Because she looked different then. I mean, she was younger, but...
Yeah, I looked at her and I said, what a skinny runt, what a... it's not, I said,
but you weren't interested in her when you first...
No, I wasn't interested in her. Just that she was a friend of my sister's, and that's it.
And then, was she friendly with everyone in the family? I mean, I assume they must have liked her for hanging around all the time.
Marilyn would say to my mother, she would say, Ma, I'm going to marry one of your sons.
And you guys had no idea that she was saying this?
Yeah, and I said, get out of here, punk.
And then, so what was the first kind of car you got and what did it look like?
The what?
What kind of car did you have and what did it look like?
I bought a car, 1939 Plymouth. It was a floor standard ship Plymouth, and I bought it for $95. And I couldn't sign for it, so my sister Helen would sign for it because she was an adult. She was old enough to sign for it. And then I had it for about a year or something like that. And then and then my brother-in-law that's married to my sister Sal, he had a Ford, 1955 Ford, and I bought that. He was going to sell it, so I bought that car from him.
And so Auntie Sal was the first one to get married, right?
Auntie Sal was the first one to get married, right?
And do you remember meeting Uncle Ralph or how that happened? How Auntie Sal met Uncle Ralph?
Yeah, well, he was from Blue Island, and he hung around with a bunch of guys there too. But
and how did she meet somebody from Blue Island then?
I don't know. I can't remember. True. I don't know. I can't remember.
And Ma, I think someone told me that Auntie Sal was Grandpa's favorite.
Yeah, Auntie Sal, Auntie Mary was my father's favorite.
And so then Auntie Sal moved out, or got married and moved out, and then when did you guys move from? You lived out in Langley and then you moved here in Forestville?
Yes, then there was a house. We wanted a bigger house, so we moved. We found out, my mother found out that they were renting a house across the street there, 11341 Forestville. And it was a house, a 3-bedroom house, and upstairs and everything like that. So that was great. We always wanted a house, so we moved in there.
And who all moved in there?
All of us moved in there.
But was Auntie Sal married yet or no?
No, Auntie Mary was. I mean, Auntie Sal was married, and she lived in Blue Island for a while, and then they eventually moved to Pullman, and then they moved back to Blue Island.
But across the street here, who lived there in that house?
The house we lived in?
Yeah, across the street. All of you lived there?
Yeah, all of us lived there. Then my sister Mary, she joined the Navy, and she moved out. And it was my brother. My brother got married, and they moved out. So it was my mom, my dad, and my sister Helen, and my sister Esther. And then Esther moved. She got married and she moved out.
Now, how did, when you started dating Mom, how did you start to figure out that she was the one that you wanted to marry? And was there any issue with her being not Mexican?
Well,
I mean, did you like, okay, what about her made you want to marry her as opposed to any of these other girls you were dating?
well, Marilyn grew on me. We were more friends than romantic friendship. It was just friends, and then it just grew on. It just grew.
And then did you ask her to marry you, or did you knew that okay?
Well, Marilyn asked me, she said, will you marry me? I said, yeah, I'll marry you,
She asked you to marry her?
Yeah.
Where did she ask you to marry her?
I don't know, somewhere in Pullman, I don't know.
And were you shocked, or were you upset that she asked you?
Well, all my friends were getting married. I said, yeah, I might as well get married. And I said, well, I'm a little nervous about that because my job wasn't stable yet.
And so, where were you working at this point?
I was working in Pullman in 1959.
So you were only at CVS for a couple years, and then what was your work? Did you immediately go to work after that?
There was I worked after school at CVS. I worked at South Chicago Ave on 87th Street. It was a wire place where they make things out of wire, and I worked there for about a year, and then they eventually closed down. So I got a job. I was out of a job for a while, and then I got a job working. I was hanging around the market hall, and they had a union hall there from Pullman Standard. And the president of the union says, you guys want a job? They're hiring people over at Pullman there. And with no trades at all, nothing. Just we'll teach you how to trade and everything. And he says, you only work 6 months out of the year, and then you can collect unemployment and everything like that. So we says, okay, we'll do that. We'll try it, And my brother and I, we got a job there, and ever since we stayed there.
And what was this year that you did that? You started working there?
1959.
And what was the first job that you had over there?
My first job was putting on these clips for the heater guards, where the seats were attached to. And that was my first job. A simple job. You have a drill, and you drill holes, you put screws, and you put this clip on there. And that was my job. And then eventually they transferred to another job, and I learned that job, and then I learned different other jobs building railroad cars. And eventually I got familiarized with all the jobs.
And where were your jobs at? Was it in the Clock Tower building?
My job was in Building 100. That's where the new building is up there now, where the
Walmart.
Where Walmart is.
So you never worked in the Clock Tower?
No, I never
worked. What
worked
was in the Clock Tower at that point?
The administration building. It was like an office building. It It was, as a matter of fact, it was the employment office. That's where I fill out the application to get a job.
And were you and Uncle Ray working in the same department, or
Yeah,
close
we
by
worked
each
in
other?
the same department and the same. Matter of fact, sometimes we work in the same railroad car, and it was great. I didn't know too much of a trade, and I found out a trade.
And then when you decided to marry Mom, and that was what, 1964, and you guys, where did you get married at, and what was? I mean, do you remember the wedding at all?
We got married in Holy Rosary Church on 113th and South Park. It's now Martin Luther King Drive. And we got married there, and we had the reception at the Legion Hall on 111th and Cottage Grove, the old Legion Hall. That's where the Pullman Civic Center is now.
And
And
now,
that building there.
how come your dad didn't attend the wedding?
Yeah, he did.
He's not in any of the pictures.
Well, we never took pictures of him, but he was there.
He was there?
Yeah, he was there. My mother was there.
I
but-
knew Grandma was there, but I didn't see pictures.
yeah, he was there.
And
My dad wasn't. He wasn't a person that associated with a lot of people. He was sort of shy or whatever. You know, he wasn't. He didn't get involved in a lot of crowd people. No.
he was kind of shy.
Yeah, well, he was. You know, he didn't talk much, and he didn't associate with a lot of people, like a group or anything like that. You know.
Now, what would you say from when you were born to like 1964? What do you think you learned from those times? I mean, was there something that you, like, even if you went back now and you talk to yourself, would there be an advice that you give to yourself, or do you feel like, I don't know, that you became a man, or that you, like, I don't know, how do you consider yourself? Do you consider that you learned what you learned then made you who you are now? Or, because it seemed pretty tough then, and you seem to have done pretty well. So, I don't know. I mean, do you feel like you wish you would have had a different childhood, or that you?
Well, if I would have been a good student, if I was trained educationally wise and thought about the future and everything like that, but I didn't. I was always thinking about money and having a good time, and I didn't have no trade or anything like that. It was just that I knew how to make money, and that was it. And then when I got a job in Pullman, I learned to trade and everything like that. And one thing led to another, and I started building things. I was happy to build things too, with my hands and everything like that. And if I had to do my life all over again, I would do the same thing. I don't regret what I did.
And you feel like you were, what was the truth? You were good with your hands with like everything? I mean, you feel like your job sort of.
Well,
I learned
a lot.
Were you good with your hands before, or did that job make you good with your hands?
That job made me do things with my hands. I learned how to deal with electric. I learned how to deal with plumbing. I learned how to deal with carpentry. I learned how to deal with woodwork and everything like that. I learned all that from Pullman. And like I say, if I had to do it all over again, I would do it. I have no regrets. But the main thing is that, thank God, Pullman taught me all these trades. And I wanted to leave Pullman, but I look back and I say, well, I got my house. I live in Pullman. And I was raised in Pullman and got good memories of Pullman.
What do you think, if you had a lesson learned from those years, what was the biggest lesson you learned? From the early years? From when you were born in 64?
I learned to be patient, and whatever dream that you have, continue dreaming, and it'll come true. You know.
And you think that happened to you?
Yeah, that happened to me.
All right. Well, we did the first part of it.
Oh, come on.
Thank you.